Welcome to Integrated Rhythm, two swing dancing besties, that's Chisomo Selemani and myself, Bobby White, navigate race and the Black experience in jazz dance and other Afro-centric social dancing. We're here with, dancer, historian, educator, promoter, instigator, designer, business owner, Julia Loving. She designs, makes, and owns Lucky Lindy's fantastic statement dancer undergarments. She runs events in Harlem, the home of Lindy Hop, and she organizes with incredible vision to the spirit of the dance, such as powerful and unique anti-racism summits and the Frankie 105 and Norma Miller Memorial Dance in New York City that brought together dozens of the pioneers and legends of Lindy Hop that are still alive today for an evening of recognition and sharing. And she is now a board member of the Frankie Manning Foundation and also its Black Lindy Hoppers Fund, the foundation's sister organization. And we mean that literally, as it is run exclusively by four of the scene's amazing Black women. Speaking of amazing Black women, Julia does all of that on top of doing tons of similar work with her sorority, the historic Delta Sigma Theta, founded at Howard University in 1913. If you've experienced white Greek life, like myself, there are generally some important differences to white and Black Greek life. A historic Black sorority like Delta Sigma Theta is usually a strong bond and commitment among its members that last one's entire life, and it involves nonprofit work, projects to raise the Black community, and a legacy dating back to when the sorority participated in the Women's Suffrage March in Washington, D.C. in 1913. At those marches, by the way, Black women were not particularly welcome and were asked to be in the back. Let's see some other helpful context to the conversation. We discussed Beantown Camp, started in 1997. It's one of the oldest modern Lindy Hop camps in the United States. It's a week-long camp in Massachusetts run by Orly and Tony Ty. And I think it's safe to say the camp is a fantastic example of an event run by white dancers that has always tried to honor and support its Black heritage. For instance, they were one of the few organizations that made it a mission to have Norma Miller on hand every year, and they offered a space where many Frankie Manning ambassadors could spend time with Norma and have personal relationships with an elder of the dance. In 2018, Julia ran an unforgettable awareness experience at Beantown, which we discuss. It's at that camp that Chisomo and Julia first met, and it's at that camp that Chisomo and I began to really bond, and the two of us got to bond with Norma Miller dancer and Mamalu Parks dancer Darlene Gist. It's also where I met my wife. So yeah, Beantown, great things happen there. By the way, Julia has an amazing episode on Ryan Swift's podcast, The Track, and we didn't overlap very much. So you should definitely hear more about this amazing woman's amazing story over there. And also The Track is a fantastic podcast, so check it out. All right, I think that covers the context. Enjoy this fantastic conversation, part 1 of 2, with Julia Loving. We coincidentally begin the conversation in a way I think all three of us would agree was very fitting, by honoring an elder, Miss Norma Miller.
Integrated Rhythm with Chisomo and Bobby.
Yeah, so with Norma Miller, I remember like so many times I've had a conversation with Norma Miller, it comes back to like the importance of showmanship and the importance of like not just doing the thing well, but doing the thing in the way that will capture other people's like eyes. And
Yes, that excellence. You have to really project and make sure the room sees you. Yes, yes.
which she
So
was obviously
certainly,
incredible at.
look,
Yeah.
and certainly as we were up at Beantown when I was doing those inclusivity panels, and the one that she actually attended that time, and just me sitting down was like not enough for her. I had to get up and formally, introduce myself professionally, and she's like, "Get up, child! What are you sitting there for? Stand up!" And she said it to myself and Latasha, which was, I was like, "Yes, ma'am."
I had
That's- I miss Norma.
yeah. I was doing
Yeah.
a talk at Beantown. Again, so many of our stories about Norma revolve around Beantown because
Yes, it
Beantown
does.
brought her in, and then Beantown is a week-long camp in in Massachusetts, and you would just have Norma around for a week, which was
Right.
amazing. Like
That's
you
right.
can't beat that. And I was giving a talk on secrets of swing dancing. It was like uh, I was excited about it at the time, but it wasn't anything amazing. It was just like, here are the secrets of swing dancing, and I had
Right.
notes
That's
to
right.
use so I could remember. And first off, Norma walks in and sits down on the front row,
Yes.
and all of a
Yes.
sudden my talk is a lot more important, and I start to realize how much I didn't practice as much as maybe I should have, and I start to think that maybe I'm not going to be as casual as I hoped I would be.
Exactly. Because when you're wrong, she's going to call you on it. That's for sure.
Exactly. And so I'm sitting there with like the note cards, and I'm probably shaking.
Yes. Yes.
And she, her advice, she's like, Bob, you got this. Put away the note cards. Bob, you got this. And she kept on telling me that I had it. And I was like so freaked out because I didn't have it. Like I was like, these cards are how I remember what I'm supposed to say. And she just wanted me to like throw them away. And to this day,
Yes.
like I was too scared to do it at the time, but I kind of wish I had just been like, you know what, Norma, you're right, and just thrown them and just like tried to go for it.
Just go with the flow, right?
I think that
Yeah.
might have made her really happy if I had done that. But
Yeah. I used to
Yeah.
use Norma not to go to some classes. Like, oh, come on, let's take a walk and talk
Yeah.
and hide.
Yeah.
But yeah, certainly. But it was such an added element to Beantown to have her up there with us, her photographic memory, her, things that I was like, you're remembering things that happened in the 1940s. I can't even remember last week, and the people, places, and things that she spoke about, the places especially, traveling and, and just bringing almost that world to life for us, her speaking about Sammy Davis Jr. and Chick Webb, and just a load of information coming out of her,
yeah,
and wanting us to know it. I think that's the most important part, was that sharing of information. So many times, generations don't have that oral narrative. I'm a part of a sorority, and yesterday I just did a interview with our charter members from the Bronx alumni chapter, and they were founded in 1968. And just hearing their memory, their collective memory about people like Dorothy Height, and in the 1940s. And I'm saying, they lived through history, and through time, and they have to say is so important, and some things that we can live by, and Norm was just is exactly so.
yeah. I was in a conversation with someone, and Tasha and I were there together, and someone mentioned like how was it possible that she and Frankie could remember so much from the old days, and Tasha and I like conjectured that like probably a lot of it was they were in showbiz traveling around a lot, and it's like what you do in the green room is you like tell stories, right? You pass the time by like telling stories, and like you run into people
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, Sammy Davis Jr., yeah, I knew him and such, and this happened, and like, oh yeah, well, this happened when I met him, and like I
Yeah.
think that they just kind of kept their stories alive themselves. It's not like they just
Yes.
stopped telling those stories from the 1940s and never thought of them again until the 2000s or 80s.
Mhm. I would believe that, absolutely.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah. I feel like so much of Norma's legacy is about excellence in dancing. And I am not going to say that that is not part of her legacy, because it absolutely is. But I think in the things that you were just saying, the story that you just shared, Bobby, and even the story you shared, Julia, she had such a message of empowerment, and
Yeah.
such a message of compassion from a space of allowing people to be seen. And so it seemed like she wanted excellence in dancing, but then also for people to be authentic and true to themselves. I remember her talking about like, she's like, I've seen so many decades, like so many generations. And she's like, I've seen 4 generations of people. And she was just so, she wanted to pass on the message, the lessons that she learned from those 4 generations, and
Yeah.
in such a compassionate way. And I don't know if compassion is always a word that we link with Norma, but I do like just hearing her messages of empowerment. Like, you got this, Bob. You got this. Like,
Well, a lot of it was tough love. She grew up in it during decades of oppression and marginalization of Black people. So, it was tough love. It was strength. It was resilience. That you have to have. And it's almost something that you're taught very young to have as a young Black person in America. Is that be that, that person to be able to stand on their own, because after all, the ultimate goal is for survival. You know.
Yeah. And I mean, her story starts out as a story of resilience,
Yes.
as as a young girl who wants to dance
Yes.
and fights to be recognized, and like that fighting spirit just followed her through all of the arenas. I mean, her legacy is incredible, and you're right. Like, she definitely has a legacy of resilience, and it makes sense that she was trying to impart that to all of us as well. I I I also had the privilege of hanging out with her a little bit when she came to Cleveland. My university brought her to Cleveland,
Oh,
and
nice.
yeah, and so I kind of feel really lucky because I haven't been around very long, but I still got to have some really nice exposure to her in her last couple years. And at Beantown, that very same Beantown we're talking about,
Yes.
2018.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
That's where I met you. Yes.
yes, exactly the one where we met. I was dancing, and I guess she kind of watched me, and I'm pretty, Bobby knows me pretty well. Like, um I I can be out in front, but I can also be really good at hiding on a dance floor. I can be
How you
like
feel?
so ghosty. I'm really good at being like, I'm gonna dance over here, so you don't really see what's going on, so you don't see how I'm messing stuff up. And so I remember using those tactics at Beantown 2018, but she somehow clocked me on the dance floor. And as I was walking off of the dance floor, she called me over, and I was like,
What do I say?
exactly.
What is she going to say? Did
Exactly.
she see me?
She saw me. Oh no. And so, and this was after I had spent time with her. But I mean, once again, those of us who spend time with elders, we recognize, like, there's this like whole posturing in Zambia with eldership. You can't see me. I'm just kind of like, I'm just
Yes. Yes.
bending my, like, like making myself a little bit smaller, and like, um and so there's this, like, reverence that I have. And so I go over to her very penitent, and she has me sit down, and she looks at me, and she was like, you look like you're enjoying yourself. And I feel like whenever we hear that from elders, there's like there's a little bit of a you look like, if you look like you're having fun, then you're not doing some great things out there. So I was just like, oh no. I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, I know I have a lot of work to do, Norma. I have to work. I think I said Ms. Norma. I was like, I know I have a lot of work to do. You have given us this beautiful thing. Thank you so much. And I need to practice. And I know how hard you worked, and you practiced really hard. And she was like, I would never wish how hard I worked on other
Or
people.
anyone. That's
She's like,
right.
on anyone. She's like, I would not wish that on anyone. You look like you were having a wonderful time. Enjoy the
That's
dance.
right. And
Enjoy this dance.
that's exactly what she meant. There was no other, meaning behind it.
Yeah.
No, hidden messages or hidden agendas. That's
No.
exactly
It
what she meant.
was just, and
Hmm.
I was just so, I loved I loved that gift that I got from her. And I really, like, Bobby and I have talked about this, like, I really wish that more people would see that side, like, understand, like, the different sides of her. And so
Yeah.
there's that. She created this thing and wants people to enjoy it and to revel in it and to do
Yeah.
it well, but to also
Yeah.
just love it. And so
Yeah.
that was such a wonderful gift she gave me.
Absolutely. Blessings. Yes.
It reminds me that when there's this really interesting thing. The more that I like looked into Norma, like her book, for instance, the more that I read into her book and stuff, the stories that a lot of us carry on from Norma are things like the Savoy contest, where was it Stretch? I think it was Stretch Mouth George.
Twist Mouth.
George.
Twist Mouth George.
Yeah.
Twist mouth. Yeah.
Like came and picked her up and danced with her in the contest,
And
and
then
then
took
went
her back outside.
and sat her down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's those kind of stories that we remember about Norma, but it's really fascinating because that's the story of something that happened to Norma, right?
Yeah.
And people probably don't realize that like she did so much. She worked so hard. Like, that they might say, oh, she would dance on the sidewalk for quarters, like a lot of the kids did. Um, she would take that quarter and she would go to the movie theater and watch a
Watch.
picture that would have dancing in it or music in it.
Yes.
And she would mimic the dancing and she would stay in that theater all day. Every time that dancing came on, she would get up and mimic the dancing again. And her mom knew that she never had to worry about Norma because she was probably out in the movie theater just working on her dancing. And this is like when she's tiny, like this is when she's really young. And that kind of mentality, like Whitey, we hear so much about we hear so much about the creativity and the work that Frankie Manning did in Whitey's Lindy Hoppers. Like he took this group on a tour and he like helped, manage the group during things like Hell's a Poppin' and stuff. You don't hear very often about the fact that Norma Miller was in charge of the group of 20, 40 Lindy Hoppers at the World's Fair Pavilion show.
Right.
She was in charge of that.
Exactly.
And so she was running that.
And that was a big deal.
Yeah.
To be an African American at the World's Fair was a big deal.
Yeah.
And to hone in and show your craft to the utmost. We talking about excellence. That is what they wanted to show was excellence. Absolutely, Bobby. Yeah. And I even think about just the whole Harlem community. The migration stories that come out of that Harlem community. Her coming from the Caribbean, Frankie coming from Florida, all in search of something. Harlem had something to offer them, and they had something to offer Harlem. And I just think about it from that perspective as well. Having all of these young adults participate in this kind of Black joy, taking this trauma and excelling. Excelling in the arts. All of them probably had that. It's not just joy. It's a form of Black joy because it's really a form of resistance to not ever having a voice, not having access, not being able to work where you want or live where you want. So at one time, back in the 20s and early 10s in Harlem, Harlem was focused really. Black Harlem was really like 135th Street and up. 125th doesn't come into play. So they were in these like very narrow blocks where they would be Black probably owners of buildings that would rent to Black people, whereas other parts of Harlem were not renting to Black. So they're bringing, their trauma from the South, that whatever they've gone through in the Caribbean. Of course, there's colonization and imperialization, of the islands, the Caribbean islands, but they're coming with that as well. But all in search for something, knowing that this may be something that they can do better and have access to. More empowerment. At the same time, New York City was still dealing with racism and segregation even within the communities, something that New York City still deals with, whether it's economic or racial, So I think about them, what they meant to Harlem and Harlem meant to them at that time.
Something really beautiful has been happening as I've been researching the original Whitey's Lindy Hoppers throughout the quarantine. And,
yes.
If a person just looked at like a sheet of paper that had the history of Lindy Hop on it, they might take away that like, oh, Lindy Hop is a Black American dance from this one neighborhood in New York. Right. But, when you look at the original dancers and when you see where they came from in their young age, like you said, Frankie from Florida, you have like Al Minns coming from Virginia. You have Mildred Pollard.
My family's home state.
Yeah. You have Mildred Pollard coming from Atlanta, which is my home turf. You have, and then like, you have Barbados being Norma Miller's. And so you have like the Caribbean, and Leon James, his parents were Caribbean. And so like, I don't know, like you said, like you realize that, Lindy Hop is not just a Black dance from a neighborhood. It's a Black dance from
communal
all
thing.
Of Black culture.
It was a diasporic dance.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is.
Because with them, you think about the stories that Frankie watched the people in his community, the grandparents, Norma watching at parties, home parties, uh, dancing, much like what I experienced, Black social dancing. If you want to think about just, my family, it wasn't the Lindy Hop, but it was social dancing. It was partner dancing. It was all of these different things that I experienced with my relatives on the weekends. Watching my mom and dad dancing to Motown. It wasn't jazz, but it was Motown. But they partner danced and they turned, they tuck turned, they did all of that. But we're gonna say, Lindy, the other dances, that the partner dancings are a continuum of the Lindy Hop. You think about disco, you think about Chicago stepping, Detroit ballroom, all DC hand dancing. Let me not leave out anything. Zydeco, because that my southern part, Zydeco dancing. Um, Chicago stepping, hand. Did I say Chicago stepping? DC hand dancing. All of those. Philly bop, right?
Yeah.
All of those are continuums of this actual partner dancing, social dancing, without the aerials, but definitely with the dips and and styling and the improv with it, and and it just really really takes me home when I do social dance, when I do Lindy Hop. Um, so yeah, I think of it in those lines. My first experiences were actually through my own household. Didn't know it was linked or a continuum of this dance. But as I got older, I started watching things down in, I would go to Harlem because this is what my deal was. I was a Bronx child, but my parents gave me the free go. That means get on the train, explore the city, right? But my favorite place was Harlem because of the blackness. I was always gravitated to that. And so I would go on Wednesdays. Me and my girlfriends on Wednesdays, we would go to amateur night at the Apollo just to boo people off the stage, just to have the fun to do that, right? But
Yeah.
we would also on the weekends just go to different parks, and we would hear the jazz, we would hear people out, dancing, and we would see people out dancing in the parks, and these were elders still dancing.
Mhm.
Lindy Hop did not end in the 40s or 50s. It was a continuum of that throughout the 60s and 70s on up until now. People just weren't as privy to it. It probably wasn't as, it wasn't as global, and people just were not privy to it. It was still going on now, you know, and to different music and different styling of it, just with minus the aerials and air steps, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, when you look at all of these old videos from the Savoy, you'll see they were social dancing and having a great time. They weren't a lot of times they were not throwing each other up in the air, you know,
Right.
and it took that connection between the lead and the follow, and then they would get out and do their individual steps, and yeah, so
Yeah.
I think about my own history with that.
Yeah.
I think something that being a I first came into the dance as an 18-year-old white guy wasp in Atlanta, and
Hmm.
when I look back now at like my conception of the dance, by not having grown up in a black family, not having grown up with that inherited movement and the inherited understanding of dancing and stuff,
Right.
I can see how it's been really hard for me to kind of wrap my brain around how multidimensional all of this is, how like the performance aspect of like the Whitey's Lindy Hoppers, how that is tied to the social dancing, but it's still yet a very different thing. But it's still, they're all kind of like interrelated and like combined in really intricate
Yes.
ways.
Yes. Yes.
Still on that
It's
journey of
yes, 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 and it's all, and the music and the musicians. It's all
yeah,
tied.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah, and
jazz dance.
absolutely.
It's jazz dance, and that jazz dance was just swinging, and it was jazz dance, and you had the tap dancers, the hoofers out there, most of whom could actually Lindy Hop themselves.
Mhm.
We were listening to a lot of the hoofers and the tap dancers. They were doing a tribute to Miss Mabel Lee, and no one knew that Mabel Lee could Lindy Hop. I'm like,
Mm.
listen, if you could take Sugar Ray Robinson and he can tap dance as a boxer, right? right up there with Gene Kelly, and almost I'm gonna say he outshined Gene Kelly. That's what I'm gonna say. Okay, for the record, everyone, go and look at that video. And if what I'm saying is that it was saturated throughout that Harlem community to jazz dance. So all the elements of it, it just wasn't a Lindy Hop. It was tap. It was you had the showgirls. You had all of that.
You heard enough and now it's time for the break.
Hey everyone, we here at Integrated Rhythm love supporting Black businesses. Why? Because if capitalism has been against Black people for so long, one of the ways we can help them rise up again is through capitalism. So throw some money at their community, please. This week, our Black business that we'd like to spotlight happens to be a swing dancer. So there's thousands of more reasons why you should support them to help give the scene more life and energy, because it is Julia Loving, the amazing Julia Loving, the, dare I say it, loving Julia Loving. And she is the owner and proprietor of Lucky Lindy's, which is a comfortable, form-fitting undergarment made of high-quality spandex. They were designed to be worn under all types of dresses and skirt styles, and pants, by the way. They are light and they've got sturdy sewing because they know what you're going to put them through. And I even hear rumors of secret pockets that you can hold secrets in. They have all sorts of colors and patterns. They're killing it. You should check them out. And they even have these amazing sparkling cutters that are sparkling colors that are fantastic for those performers out there who want to show some sparkle. You can find Julia Loving's Lucky Lindy's at Lucky Lindy's NYC Etsy store. That's right. Go to Etsy, type in Lucky Lindy's, Lindys NYC, click, and you'll go there and you'll love it. By the way, what is that fantastic music we're listening to again? It's Baron Ryan. That's Laurel's brother, a badass pianist known for his combination of classical and jazz music. His new album, first of its kind, is rights free. You heard us correct. Anyone can use it. Put it on your podcast, your YouTube video, your own music project. It's all yours. Want the album and any of his other work? Head to baronryan.com. Want to hear him play with Ryan's father, yet another badass pianist? Head to ryanandryanmusic.com. And most importantly, you can contribute to Baron's project of making rights-free music. Because as delicious as it is, you can't live off of admiration and appreciation. Go to firstofitskind.net. Check out the story, learn how awesome his project is, and help support it. That's firstofitskind.net.
Podcasting ain't free. Podcasting ain't free. You may think it costs no money, but podcasting ain't free. Whee!
We're back.
Yeah. You were talking about your personal history and your connection, like from the legacy of oral traditions into dancing and all of that. But as you were saying that, it made me think of your family and your last name. And so, do you mind sharing a little bit about the legacy of your family? I mean,
Yeah,
it's pretty incredible.
Sure. Well, my family are the Lovings, okay? I am Richard, there's a landmark Supreme Court case named after the Lovings. Richard and Mildred Loving of Virginia. It was a couple, an interracial couple. The United States had, I'm going to say, areas that miscegenation and amalgamation were taking place. When I say that, that means interracial relations, willing and not, not in the form of rape or anything, but people willingly loving each other, especially early, during Jim Crow segregation. 1957, Mildred and Richard decide to get married. They love each other. They know Virginia is one of those states out of like 27 states that does not allow interracial marriage. So what they do is they go to Washington, D.C. and they get married. But they didn't realize that Virginia still had strict laws against cohabitating with regards to blacks and whites. Okay. So they used that as well. Um, Basically, and just to let you know, Richard, I'm related to Richard Loving. Okay.
Mhm.
My family has an interracial background. Most of the Lovings came out of England. They settled in different parts of the country: Lovingston, Virginia, Caroline County, Virginia, Loving, Texas. So they went all around. It's a large family of males. So I am actually related through enslavement. Okay,
Mm.
a third cousin of Richard's through my grandfather and great grandfather, through that on my dad's side. Um, so so just getting back to the case, they go back to Virginia and they're arrested. Mildred spends over a week in jail, and uh, Richard gets out like the next day. And the Virginia state law said, or the Leon Basil, the judge at the time, said that if God had wanted the races together, He wouldn't have put them on different continents, right? So, uh,
Wow.
yes, and so what they did, they had to fight the case, and they battled Virginia law. They kept losing. So eventually they were forced to, after 20, they were told after, they could leave the state of Virginia, but they couldn't stay in the state of Virginia. They could return in 25 years. They had to go somewhere else. So they ended up going to Washington, D.C. And at that time, the American Civil Liberties Union was taking on cases. Um, Mildred wrote Robert Kennedy, which was the actual attorney general at the time, which was, John F. Kennedy's brother. And he forwarded to the American Civil Liberties Union. And a young, new lawyer, I can't remember his name right now, but he took on the case. There was two of them, because he had a friend that was going to help him out, and they took it to the Supreme Court, and unanimously all the judges, including the justices, I should say, including that Justice Earl Warren, they said that it was illegal to violate someone's 14th Amendment rights, and your 14th Amendment rights are basically your right to you know to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, equal protection under the laws. And, as a U.S. citizen, which that's one of the reasons why Frederick Douglass really, really fought for that 14th Amendment, to make African Americans U.S. citizens so that we could have those equal protections under the law. And one of those equal protections is being able to have this happiness, and love and marriage is a part of that. So those, so that's the landmark Supreme Court case, and just in the gist. And so they returned to Virginia, and the saddest part is that my cousin Richard passed away in like 1967. They were returned to Virginia in like 1967, 68. So he lived maybe about 8 years. There was a car accident. Somebody supposedly ran them off the road that was drinking. So I don't know what the truth of that is. But one good thing that came out of it is the fact that it has set the tone for cases that deal with LGBTQ marriages as well. And it has, basically been one of those cases that we use today,
Yeah. Yeah. You were talking
It's
about
crazy.
Black joy as resistance, and
Yes,
your family's legacy, your legacy is wrapped up in this. Like, we
yes,
will love, we will bring joy in the face of challenge, in the face of oppression. And because of your family's legacy, we've been able to make some nice strides. And I mean, you said
yeah,
1957, that's within my mother's lifetime. Like,
yeah, yeah.
1957 is not, I think
No, it's
oftentimes
not long ago.
it's
It's
not
not
long
long
ago.
ago. And how I teach it to my students, and I say, my brother was born, my older brother was born in 1964. When all of those states had to reverse, and it's, just like the Brown versus Board of Ed, 1954. It took them some years to acknowledge those kind of, integration of schools, desegregating schools, even up here at North, Massachusetts, they had issues with desegregating schools. you can put laws and you can create laws, you can create amendments, you can create acts, all of those. But you have to. It takes time to change mindsets.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, so you're right. No, it was our I'm gonna say your mom's generation. I'm a little older than you, Chisomo, because I did just turn 50. Right? You all didn't know that, but I did. So
Hey.
yes, and so it's definitely my time period. My parents were very active during the civil rights movement. My mom had a civil disobedience charge on her record for a little bit from something that she did down in Virginia. Trying to integrate how you just go to Walgreens or Walmart and
Mm-hmm.
you could go and shop and then eat there, whatever, right? Um, my At that time they had Woolworths, and
Yeah.
Woolworths they had, you could shop, but for black people in Richmond, Virginia, you couldn't. And that was like, my parents are from rural Virginia, okay,
Mm-hmm.
down below Charlottesville, and it's very rural, right? And they would go to Richmond because that was more urban, more city. Not as urban like New York, but a lot more than what rural Virginia was. And so they could shop there, but they couldn't sit down and eat a burger or have a milkshake with their classmates. And that's where they would go and do their shopping for school in August. Because Virginia schools go back to school in August, and they would do their shopping there, and they would just want tired of not being able to. They would have to take a trip all the way back to Nelson County, where my mom's from, and they wouldn't have anything to eat unless certain stores wouldn't cater to them. They couldn't go into certain stores because of segregation. So I too am a part of that great migration legacy. My parents left the South in 1959. You know,
Mm-hmm.
right out of high school. My mom comes from a family of 20. My dad comes from a family of 13. And for the most part, all of the kids, came up north, either settling in Maryland or settling in a little bit northern, or New York, or Washington, D.C. And yeah, so yes, that black joy, and taking the marginalization and oppression of Jim Crow terrorism, and excelling and fighting against things, that's been in my family. My great grandmother was a Marcus Garvey follower, living in the South, a Marcus Garvey follower, almost like Malcolm X's dad, and they did with people like that voice their opinions.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
No, I really, really was. I wish I would have been able to meet Frankie Manning, to be able to speak to him about what it was like growing up for him, leaving Florida, coming up north,
Yeah.
or even any of them. That's one of the main things that even with the Frankie Manning Foundation that we're trying to do, is make sure that Frankie does not look like a one-dimensional man. Because he was definitely more than that. And when you're looking at him, you have to make the connections with his partners. You have to make the connections with him and the band leaders. Because they would feed off of one another, so they had a relationship too. Him with other dancers from other parts of the dance world. Um, and he worked with Alvin Ailey. He helped choreograph a lot of shows for Alvin Ailey Dance Theater, which is one of the same reasons why there's an Alvin Ailey is the same reason why Frankie Manning would end up in Harlem. You know, trying to create your own spaces when you are ruled out and don't have access to others.
Right.
He worked with Debbie Allen.
Mm-hmm.
All of these different things. For a while, when I first learned about Frankie, all I saw were pictures of him dancing with white people. And I was like, wait a minute, this just does not, it just was, I had to do my own research. And you have to dig for it, because the perspectives that were put out and the photos that were put out on Google and imaging and all of that, that's all you would see. And then I started asking people, Mickey Davidson, Darlene, just um, who else? Just speaking to people in the community and asking. Even Clyde Wilder, there's a continuum that's still in Harlem of Lindy Hop, and yeah, just through those, to find out more, things I just did not know. just that he was a part of. And he danced, and like I have photos of him that from the 90s, and he was much older then, dancing with a lot of the Harlem dancers. He never, like, it always, when I first was around, it just didn't seem like he was back in Harlem at all, but he was. He still had a community of people that he still, would hang out with, dancers and all of that, and teach and instruct in Harlem. And some of these actually memories are in Frankie 100's book. So if anyone, if you have a chance to read, you'll read some of the stories of Amani A. Payne and Mickey Davidson and their relationships with, Frankie. And I think that's very important to know, because it always seems, when people look at his history, it's just through sometimes a different perspective. Then, it's not out there as much, but it should be.
Yeah.
And so now you're continuing the tradition in Harlem as a promoter of dancing in Harlem. And how is that, like, how's everything that you've learned shaped how what your vision is for the events you put on?
Okay, so again, Beantown and that Norma Miller. Norma's, I look up because I think of Norma. Norma says, "Well, where are you all dancing? This is around lunch or dinner." She's like asking Ron and I, "Where are you all dancing now?" I was like, "Where are you all dance? Where are you all dancing in Harlem?" I was like, "Well, we're doing dance classes with Samuel Coleman at the Kennedy Center on 135th Street, not too far. You can see my cat in the background. Oh gosh, there she goes. that so her name is Autumn. She's a calico, right? So anyway, so she was asking, well, where in Harlem, and all we were saying was that we take dance instructors, and sometimes we have dances at Marcus Garvey Park. In the summertime, the Harlem Swing Dance Society does things. Samuel hosts things. And then she says, really? I said, for the most part, most of the things we're doing are downtown. And she goes, really? I said, yeah. She goes, well, why isn't there anything up in Harlem that's like on a constant or a steady basis? I said, I don't know. Why are you asking me that? Right? And she goes, well, don't you think there should be, because she has this way, right? And I'm from the Bronx and she's from Harlem, right? But we're two New York City girls, and that's our form of communication. People may think it's a disrespect, but that call and response that her and I have, it's a New York City thing. It's a little rough around the edges. People probably think I'm rough around the edges, but it just is what it is. That's who I am, right? That's who she is. But we had that kind of connection, and so she goes, well, don't you think there should be something? I said, well, I think so. And look, I was not going to say, I'm going to do it, right? She goes, but don't you think you should do something about that? I said, you know what, Norma? If you're beating around the bush, what do you want me to do? Right? She goes, well, I think there should be some dancing in Harlem. I said, I think so too. I said, we're dancing, but it definitely could be something a little bit better. And then so Ron was there, and Ron and I was like, yeah, we could probably do some dances here and there. But in New York City, in Harlem, the spacing was an issue. So we came back home, and it was in like September. Ronald and I started saying we're going to start a Lindy Hop dance space in Harlem. And it's not, honestly, there's nothing like having Black agency, having your own space, having a space that you can make it inclusive of the community that really where it started. There's nothing like a space that you feel accepted in, because sometimes I've been to, events and venues in New York City where I didn't even get asked to dance, and I hate harping on that, but that is an issue. That was an issue. And that's one of the reasons why maybe not. I spoke to Norma about it, about inclusion, because she was like, what is this inclusivity stuff, right? So I think her way of resolving that for me was to tell me to create my own space. And not so many words of having to say, well, Julia, if you don't like what you're getting somewhere, then you may need to start your own. And that's what the people of the past, that's what our legacy has taught us, that, sometimes if you don't like things the way they're going, you may have to create your own and make it a safe space for you all. Make it a communal space. And so we started Swing With Us NYC. Originally, we were going to do it at Londell's because that's where the Chicago Steppers have their dance. Londell's is a restaurant in Harlem. And it's a small space. So we're going to start it small. And we had Virgie, Virgie Savage Branch, we had Cassandra Green. And these are people that actually learned from Frankie. Um, and so all four of us were going to do it, as well as Cynthia Brown. And then for some reason, Londell's fell through. Okay. And I remember what happened. The American Lindy Hop Championships happened at the National Black Theater. And I remembered that space. And I was there. I was helping Paulette, set up stuff. We went around looking at venues, and that was the place we had decided on having the American Lindy Hop Championships. And I called Nabi Faison, and I said to him, I said, I need help. I said, do you remember me? I said, you remember me? I'm the one that kept saying, you need to come and dance with me for a bit. He's like, who could forget you, Julia Loving, right? So, you never know the connections that you make, and it may just be as natural as whatever, how they later on may be something that's going to help you. So I was telling him about my dilemma and not being able to get Londell's, and I certainly did not want to cancel having the event. And I told Norma about it. I said, we're going to have our first event in Harlem, Lindy, that's going to be like a dance space. So I held it at the National Black Theater, which is a sacred space in itself. Dr. Barbara Antier started it and founded it. She was one of these people that during the 1960s realized that there wasn't, she was a part of the Black arts movement, that there wasn't a space for theater, for African Americans in Harlem. She got this space on 125th Street that extends, almost half the block towards Madison and Fifth, and towards 100. It extends from 125th to 126th, but it's a sacred space. They've had all kinds of actors and actresses go through those doors and performances. So it was right at home to have it there, and we just started, he just allowed us to keep hosting our events there. I do miss it. It has been a space that, we've been able to invite people to come in and perform. And, we've had a couple of, jazz artists come in and dance and things of that sort. So it's been, it's been okay.
And that's where you held the Norma Memorial.
No,
Oh, no, that was a different
we
place.
held it at the Alhambra, Ballroom, which is in itself is legacy as well. Because that was one of the places that used to have on Sunday nights Lindy Hop dances.
Yeah.
When Frankie was living, when he was a youngster. So Frankie, he wouldn't go to the Metropolitan Baptist Church. He would go to which is 2 blocks down. He would go to the Alhambra Ballroom and do the teen dancing on Sundays. So we held the Norma Miller Frankie Manning 105 at the Alhambra Ballroom, which was, it was one of the great moments. Norma had passed. We were going to do the Frankie 105 with the Swedes. So they had the Swedes in New York come. They did classes, but Norma had passed, so we did a tribute to Norma Miller as well as Frankie, and had to, a big shebang, a big, a send off, as well as almost a legacy of understanding, the roots. We had Jason Samuel Smith come in, tap dance, and did a legacy step to Buster Brown. Buster Brown was certainly a great tap dancer, and many of whom learned from him, like Savion Glover, including Jason. And Buster Brown Lindy Hop. Like I said, you can't separate. For a long time, for a while, the jazz dancers have been separated. And so we had that. We had Cotton Club dancers. We had Shanna and Carmen Carricker come in to represent that aspect. We also had the Big Apple Lindy Hoppers come in to represent, Frankie's original organization of that actual group. So it was really a nice, and Chaz Young, Frankie's son, was there, and Ryan Francois came in for it as well. He did this wonderful legacy story and brought all of the elders up and introduced them from different time periods, and that's online too if anybody's
Yeah.
interested.
Yes.
It's,
Everyone, by the way, everyone should listen to that speech. It
that speech was an
was
amazing
so
speech.
good. It was,
Yeah.
yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, and we had Al Min's grandson come, Kevin, and
Mhm.
his daughter, wasn't able to stay, but we brought Kevin in so he could be a part of it because, like I said, we don't want the Frankie Manning legacy to be just about Frankie because it wasn't, and he knew, and he celebrated his community, he celebrated the people that he worked with. So we wanted to make sure that we were as inclusive as that, to make sure we bring we all, their roots and their branches, but we needed to make sure that we had the whole tree, to make sure that they were properly represented,
Yeah,
and then people could know about it. Yeah.
there was some, I was very lucky to be able to attend that. And I can't tell you all how powerful it felt to be in that room and to like experience that. And I can't thank Julia enough for making that thing happen. It was just amazing.
Yeah. Thank you, Bobby. That means a lot because, like I said, Norma planted the seed. And it seems like now I'm doing, like, every time I turn around, I'm doing somebody's uh, celebration of life. Let's put it that way. Their final celebrations, and as it is, I've done tours of Jazz Corner, up at Woodlawn Cemetery here in the Bronx, and where we have a lot of our jazz greats there. Duke Ellington's there, Lionel Hampton is there. Who else? Miles Davis, and we also have now, Frankie Manning's buried there. Now we have our wonderful Norma up there. So it just, I don't know, it just, for some reason, it's all just, you know, it's coming together. It's becoming a circle almost. All the things that I've been able to, blessed to be accomplished and do for the community itself.